Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
A deputy at the King County Sheriff's Office in Washington State has resigned. He cited what he called toxic leadership in the department as the reason. Those leaders, he says, stopped caring about their deputies.
And this message is directly for Mitzi Johanknick, our sheriff. You failed us, and you failed us miserably. You should have left when the guild was asking you to. I once suggested to a senior member up there downtown, when I worked downtown, to do a command climate survey. And I got laughed at. They said the sheriff doesn't really want to know the truth to that. In 5 combat deployments, even where I was losing soldiers and morale was really low, I have never worked in an organization that had lower morale than we have right now.
Former Deputy Jesse Bailey served 23 years in the Army and 10 years as a law enforcement officer. He said he continued to come to work despite the defund the police movement, but he says when the department started to become toxic on the inside, that was too much for him. We contacted the sheriff's office and they declined to comment. What's more, Bailey reportedly says that despite being fully vaccinated, he stands with his officers and their right to choose. The U.S. Secretary of Commerce is accusing Beijing of preventing Chinese airlines from buying U.S. aircraft. She's also accused the regime of human rights abuses and stealing intellectual property.
The U.S. is accusing Beijing of violating a trade deal between the two countries and hindering Chinese companies from purchasing Boeing airplanes. U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo said on Monday the Chinese government prevented its domestic airlines from buying tens of billions of dollars of U.S.-manufactured Boeing airplanes. She said similar in a previous interview with National Public Radio, accusing China of stealing U.S. intellectual property rights and creating all kinds of barriers for U.S. companies to do business in China. China accounts for a quarter of Boeing's global market. But continuing deterioration of U.S.-China relations has added uncertainty to the prospects for cooperation between Boeing and China. Dave Calhoun is Boeing's president and chief executive officer. He says, "We cannot afford to be locked out of that market." China's foreign ministry responded days later, saying China hopes the U.S. can follow market principles and work with Beijing.
The UK is reportedly forcing a Chinese business to sell its stake in a nuclear power station. This as relations between London and Beijing cool off, and the UK takes another look at Chinese involvement in its critical infrastructure. NTD's Patrick Hayden in London has more.
China's CGN currently owns a 20% stake in a proposed nuclear plant in the UK called Sizewell C. Having China deeply involved with critical infrastructure is an ever-increasing security concern for the UK government. The Financial Times reports the government plans to force the sale of the Chinese stake.
We should never have got ourselves into the deluded belief that the only way the UK could raise capital for its long-term economic and energy mix for the future was to turn to China.
CGN is a US blacklisted company and is considered to have ties to the Chinese military. The UK government has been slower to recognise the security threat. Forcing the sale of the Chinese ownership will likely mean the government will own the stock, while a decision is made how to structure the company.
But look, let's be clear, the IPO is just one of the many inventive ways we have of being able to raise capital in this country. As the global hub of international finance, we can, with some ease, find access to capital markets necessary to build these infrastructure projects.
Armstrong says the UK should spread its investments across smaller nuclear plants so there is enough nuclear power to support renewable sources.
But there are now more options on the table than ever before. The advent of small and medium-sized reactors offer the ability to create low-risk, spread out energy mix that can make a good local solid contribution without the need to resort to mega investment packages that have sent us into the arms of China.
CGN's 20% stake in the nearly $27 billion plant is worth nearly $5.5 billion. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
And YouTube's COVID-19 policies have led to a major dispute with Russia. The Kremlin is threatening to ban the tech giant after it shut down 2 channels from Russia's state broadcaster. YouTube claims the channels spread COVID-19 misinformation. Here are the details.
Russia is threatening to retaliate against both YouTube and Germany today. That's after YouTube shut down 2 German-language channels from Russian state broadcaster RT. YouTube had already issued strikes and suspended the channel from uploading new videos for a week. An RT reporter explained what the videos in question talked about.
Criticism of the government's approach of the pandemic voiced by other medical experts, not by journalists. So to claim that this was medical misinformation, misinterpretation, well, in the eyes of RT Deutsch, that's debatable.
Now Russia's communications regulator says it will block access to YouTube if the tech giant doesn't restore the videos. And the Russian Foreign Ministry calls the measure unjust. They allege that YouTube collaborated with the German government, a charge Germany denies.
Wir haben diese Entscheidung von YouTube zur Kenntnis genommen.
I want to say in crystal clear terms that this is a decision by YouTube, and the German government or representatives of the German government have nothing to do with this decision. So anyone who alleges that is putting together a conspiracy theory.
Diese Entscheidung nichts zu tun. Wer das also behauptet, der bastelt sich eine Verschwörungstheorie zurecht.
The Russian Foreign Ministry also says retaliatory measures are not only appropriate, but also necessary. And RT calls this ban an act of media war by Germany. The outlet's editor-in-chief promises to ban German media operating in Russia.
Aus unserer Sicht gibt es überhaupt keinen Anlass.
From our point of view, there is absolutely no reason for those, as you call them, retaliations against German media working in Russia. And anyone who calls for or talks of such retaliations doesn't show a good relationship with press freedom, from our point of view.
One of the channels, RT Deutsch, had over 600,000 followers and operated primarily in Germany. After YouTube temporarily suspended the channel, RT used another channel to upload videos. YouTube then banned both of them for violating community guidelines.
Natural gas prices fell almost 7% after a big run-up, but it's still up 26% for September and almost double since the beginning of the year. Americans should prepare to fork out a little more this winter as global demand heats up. NTD's Faye Quarter has the details.
Natural gas prices have surged over 180% over the past year, the most expensive it's been since 2014.
You're seeing supply and investment in supply kind of lag behind demand because there's a little bit of uncertainty and risk. People don't want to jump right in and start producing a lot.
Brett Bennett is a policy director at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. He says there was a huge demand shock during the pandemic, and now there's a lot of uncertainty in the industry about how the demand will recover. Bennett says the social atmosphere also plays a role.
The ESG movement, the political motivation to invest more in renewable assets right now versus oil and gas resources and coal as well, is trying to drive up prices.
John Boyd is a principal at the Boyd Company, which specializes in corporate site selection. He says another big reason is the Biden administration's energy policy.
Biden's executive order, signed in January, which places a moratorium upon leasing for oil and gas drilling. Of course, roughly 25% of our nation's energy comes from federal lands.
Even though supply is behind demand, the United States is the world's leading producer of natural gas. The U.S. Energy Information Administration says around half of U.S. households use natural gas, and that natural gas is the most used power source for the U.S. power grid. Faye Quarter, NTD News.
And 2 people were shot Tuesday night in Manhattan's Upper West Side. A mayoral candidate went to the crime scene to point out an important piece of evidence. He says the city needs a mayor that'll be on the streets. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story.
We're near 89th Street in Amsterdam, where 2 people were shot Tuesday night. All that's left is a trail of dried blood. The NYPD tells us 2 men were shot, one in the chest, one in the arm. Mayoral candidate Curtis Lewa was there that night to assess the aftermath. Talk to me a little bit about what happened at the spot.
It was about 8:30 last night, and a drug deal is taking place.
Sliwa founded the Guardian Angels, an unarmed civilian patrol group, about 40 years ago to help quell New York City's high crime.
We can see the bloodstains here.
On Tuesday night, the candidate pointed out for the cameras that there was a gun beneath a car, not far from where the shooting happened. The NYPD tells us Sliwa didn't recover the gun, but the candidate says this is the kind of presence the mayor needs to have.
Is that it? Yeah. I gotta go. There it is. Good. If the mayor is there, then the police will feel a morale boost. The mayor's here. They got my back. And they'll be more aggressive, and you'll see crime will go down. But if the mayor doesn't come out, then the men and women of the police department are going to assume they don't care at City Hall. So you got to show the cops that you care. You got to be a cheerleader for them. And the people have to see the mayor is here. Oh, something's going to get done.
Sliwa says neither his Democratic opponent, Eric Adams, nor the current mayor fits this description. Adams hasn't gotten back to us, but like Sliwa, he has crime-fighting experience. According to his campaign's website, the Democratic candidate served as a New York City police officer for 22 years. On Twitter this Wednesday, Adams laid out steps the city should take to stop blood from running in the streets. I renew my calls, he said, for steps to combat this crisis, which include creating a joint guns and gangs task force, rebuilding the NYPD's plainclothes unit as an anti-gun unit, and fully funding the crisis management system. That last one is a city system that sends teams of violence interrupters to help de-escalate disputes before they turn violent. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
People across the country can get a free cup of coffee if you know where to look. NTD's Phil Zoe goes on the hunt for some freebies on what's known as National Coffee Day.
It's National Coffee Day. What better way to celebrate than getting some free coffee? Let's go check out Starbucks. Hi, sir. Free cup of coffee for National Coffee Day? Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks, man. Thank you. All right. I just got my free cup of coffee at Starbucks. Let's see what else we can get.
Krispy Kreme was also offering free coffee.
Wow, that looks so great. Thank you so much.
I got myself an iced coffee.
I usually drink coffee every day. I love coffee, but it's a little late in the day for me to be drinking coffee right now.
Better get the coffee while you can because prices are going up.
Coffee prices have gone up a lot of delays moving coffee from producing countries to our roasting plant in Queens, New York.
Coffee futures were selling for $1 per pound for years, but recently nearly doubled to about $2 per pound. Family-owned coffee roaster Bean & Bean says it's been a struggle.
Coffee that cost me $3.50 per pound is now costing me over $5 per pound.
Even so, Han says she's not planning to raise her prices just yet and is staying positive.
Let's all just take a moment to appreciate all of the love and the collective labor that was involved in bringing you this cup of coffee.
I don't know about you, but National Coffee Day is turning out pretty good for me. Phil Zoe, NTD News, New York.
Go into the blue to beat the pandemic blues. That's what some locals in Rio de Janeiro are doing to lift their spirits during COVID times.
Before the pandemic, the famous Copacabana beach attracted millions of tourists and swimmers each year. Now its waves give cold comfort to residents dealing with the grind of daily life. Bernardo Tillman is a member of a group that accompanies swimmers into the open water. He said that many people who suffer depression are still scared to say that they are suffering from it, and that the ocean is a great help.
Talking about mental health is a taboo. And when you come to the open water, we help everyone that arrives.
Brazil was particularly hard hit during the pandemic with some 600,000 deaths. But as the country slowly lifts its COVID-19 restrictions, many are still left to deal with the anguish of the virus. One university professor suffered a stress-related illness during the pandemic. She says swimming in Copacabana's cold waves has helped her health.
I already had some treatment, but it didn't work. It was only palliative. So I decided to start swimming because a friend recommended it to me. And it has since changed my life.
Experts believe that swimming in cold water not only provides cardiovascular benefits, but it also releases endorphins into the brain, giving us a feeling of euphoria.
Now that people are freer post-vaccine, people are starting to feel what happened, the consequences of which are being seen now. Depression, anxiety, what happened, what didn't happen. I see that sports makes the difference.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to catch all of our programs on TV. NTD Evening News is on every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Find your local NTD channel at ntd.com/TV.
Everything that's reported on television isn't always true, but it should be. NTD, the power of truth. Now available 24/7 on television and streaming platforms.